All right, we're here to talk about the Airbnb and DoorDash IPOs. No, sorry, just kidding. Welcome, everyone. Christmas holiday shopping for 2020. Welcome to the show. We're going to do quick backward introductions here with our guests. I'm Ray Wang, one of the co-founders and your co-anchor here for DisrupTV. We got our awesome producer, Elle. She's in the middle here. And of course, we got Vala here, which will join us later to do the introductions. So quickly, working our way backwards. Marty, where are you calling from? And what are you talking about today?
Hey Ray, Marty Marcinczyk. I'm down here in Florida right now. I was able to escape Philadelphia for a few months since our office was closed. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about how consumer dynamics are really driving organizational change and the importance of customer experience, as well as the introduction to a company that we started within Comcast called Helm.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. And here we're with Andrew as well. Andrew, you are the furthest away. We'll find out, but actually Dave is, depending where you are. Tell us where you're calling in from, and of course, what are you going to be talking about today?
Okay, I'm Andrew Hall. I'm calling from the UK, where as you can see, it's dark outside. I run a small investment firm, and before that, I worked for a long time in the advertising business. So the two key events of this week for me are obviously the situation with the Facebook antitrust and, of course, the Brexit, which I will be talking about.
We will definitely jump into that and go deep. Lara, let's talk about where you're calling from and what you're going to talk about today.
I'm calling from the San Francisco Bay Area, not too far from Ray. I'm a managing director at Silicon Valley Data Capital, and I'm going to talk about sort of what's going on in the venture world and the sort of not quite post-COVID, but maybe mid-COVID, and how things have either stayed the same or changed.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then, of course, Dave, I don't know what time it is there. Where are you calling from, and what are you talking about today?
Yeah, it's the future down here. I'm in Australia, so Melbourne, Australia. It's Saturday morning for me, so I've got my cup of coffee here. And I'm not going to be talking about how amazing the coffee is this morning, but probably the crazy world of software this year and what Dynatrace does to help people with AI and automation deliver on their software experiences throughout the year. It's been a remarkable 2020. So happy to be here and finish off the year in style.
Very, very cool. Hey, well, with that, we're going to start the show. Vala, do the honors, and we'll kick it off.
Great. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send your questions to Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests using hashtag DisrupTV, and we will do our best to answer them live. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author. The book is behind me. Best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business. And he's just announced his new book, Everyone Wants to Rule the World, and we'll maybe talk about that. He's a contributor to ZDNet, Harvard Business Review. He's regularly on television, business, and technology news, contributing for Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, and Bloomberg. He's a global sought-after keynote speaker and one of the most influential futurists on Twitter at RWA and G0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much. I'm here with my awesome co-host, co-founder, Vala Afshar. He's the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce. But more importantly, you can follow him, as so many other people have, for inspirational tweets, followed by CIOs, CEOs, CMOs, CFOs everywhere. And more importantly, you can see him speaking at a large number of events, very, very high-profile events. If you've caught him, of course, at Dreamforce to You, and of course, more importantly, all over on TV as well. As his own book. One day we will put that book up because I do have a copy of that. But it's not about us. We're going to be talking about our awesome guests today. And before we do that, we also want to thank our sponsors, Robots and Pencils, especially for their generous support of the show. You can check them out if you're looking at design, digital transformation, and of course, thinking about where the future goes next. So with that, who's our first guest?
Ray, after 664 interviews, I'm so excited to have a digital evangelist on our show. Dave Anderson is digital evangelist at Dynatrace. He's the digital performance expert of software intelligence company Dynatrace. In his capacity, Dave's responsible for repositioning Dynatrace from an application performance management vendor to a software intelligence leader. Balancing his marketing abilities with technical know-how, Dave is often found demoing Dynatrace at events on camera at the largest stage in the world. He's a passionate keynote speaker, has been a regular speaker at major events across the globe, including AWS reInvent, Red Hat Summit, Gartner Symposium, where he shares stories on the importance of digital customer experiences and the emergence and adoption of AI and automation, which has been an incredibly important topic, especially this year. You can follow Dave on Twitter at DaveAndo. Welcome, Dave, to DisrupTV.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Hey,
thanks for being here.
We are really excited to have you. You're one of the pioneers in social selling, hitting new media, telling stories, and, definitely, evangelizing products. And so I want to actually talk about this market in general, like business continuity, what's happening with the pandemic. Where do you see that going? I know you talk a lot about it for Dynatrace, but in the bigger picture, what's happening? Why happening now? So
this is a dangerous year to do predictions, Ray. So to see what's coming, I don't think any of us saw what was coming, right? So I remember being in Vegas in January, and I said the last 10 years was one of the most remarkable 10 years of all time. And you think how much technology changed in the last 10 years, what's going to happen in the next 10? And 10 days later, of course, we got hit with probably the most disruptive pandemic of all time. But what it did teach us, aside from the humane elements of this pandemic, is how critical software is to everyone, to everything that we do. To a lot of extent, software has helped us get through this pandemic. It's allowed us to do things like this, where we can still connect with each other. My kids could still homeschool. People could still file for unemployment benefits and things like that. And so, I think more than anything, it's taught us that software needs to work. It needs to work at scale. It needs to work for everyone across all the different elements. And so if people weren't already on a fast digital transformation path, they're certainly on it now. And I've heard from numerous customers that were told to do things in 3 days that they were meant to do in 3 months or 3 years. And ultimately, it just needs to work. And it's sort of been a forcing function to cause change for a lot of us.
Yeah, no, definitely. Were you at CES in January? Is that where you were? Like wondering?
I wasn't.
What was going to
happen? It was a Dynatrace event. So it was a user conference, but it was in Vegas, and there was still talk of what was going on with this pandemic, but we didn't know, did we? Like it was going to be this disruptive.
No.
Maybe we probably should have, and we probably should have read the warning signs. But very disruptive year, wasn't it?
Yeah, both Ray and I were at CES, and there was a lot of people making predictions about the year and the future, and I think we all can pause and reflect. But I think it was Steve Jobs who said the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. And during times of uncertainty, it's so important to have trusted advisors sharing stories, lessons learned, mistakes made, and so what advice do you have? We had Guy Kawasaki on our show, and he was the first evangelist I knew in tech. And I think in 1984, he brought the Mac 2 working for Steve Jobs. And so as an evangelist, what advice do you have for other evangelists in technology companies in terms of how they can leverage power of storytelling to explain, what's happening and perhaps inspire and educate and ignite positive action so that people can ready themselves for the next normal? Yeah,
it's a good question. And I think storytelling it's critical. It goes back to the human origins of where we all started, right? We would sit around a campfire and for the amount of times I've sat in conferences and you listen to people speak and you go, wow, they're really smart. And then I go to the next day and I maybe had a couple of gin and tonics and I go, what were they talking about again? I can't remember anything. And so it's important to just get a couple of key points in that's going to resonate with people. And I think I've just been, maybe it's because I'm from Perth and I'm pretty simple. And I just like to tell simple stories because I haven't, when you did the intros, there were all these books and all these things. And I'm just sitting there going like, I just tell stories. But I like to tell stories that can resonate with people, that make them laugh, that can get them to react. And I found this year very hard because, like when you present to people, you read people's body language, you understand whether or not is it working? Do I need to change tack? Do I need to do something differently? And I found this year really stressful because it's us doing this, and it's like, are you agreeing with me? Are you just nodding your head because you have to, and it's part of the show, and you wish this guy would shut up? Or I don't think. Hopefully, this is not the case. But yeah,
I'm nodding and I'm happy and I'm leaning in, so I'm all into it.
That's good. We need new cues for Zoom now. It's like if he leans in, it means he's interested. But yeah, no, I think storytelling is critical, and whatever business that is. And from a marketing perspective, I've worked in marketing for years. It's like, what does that person care about ultimately? What do they really care about? What's the lowest common denominator. And there's that saying of like, ask 5 reasons why or 3 reasons why, whatever. I don't even know what it is, but like just get to the very point of what that person really cares about and market the life out of that, and then find a story that substantiates whatever that is. And from a Dynatrace perspective, that's like helping people get home to see their family so they're not staring at software code that's broken, and using an AI that gives them answers. And from my perspective, it's like, great, so you can go and spend time with the kids. You can do something more valuable with your time. You're not sort of stuck in a basement staring at lines of code. So that's what I think humans care about, letting them do things that make a difference. So, and that's where the storytelling comes from.
Ray, before you ask the question, Dave just gave a great startup idea. There's about 3,200 startups in the AI space. So if you're in the computer visioning space, automatically capturing tone and sentiment by video analysis would be great. So again, the facial gestures and leaning in, smiling eyebrows. I'm sure there's probably 100 markers that can tell you whether your audience is engaged and intently listening. So again, we have lots of entrepreneurs watching.
Our next set of guests probably have just figured how to fund that while we're talking. So the term sheet's already out. We better worry about that. So,
but it's the sentiment, right? So that political sentiment thing, we have them in the politics in Australia. It's a little worm, and it goes like positive and negative, and you can be talking like now. And am I positive? Am I positive? Oh gosh, say something funny. Do something interesting.
Turn the dial.
Approval line.
We had the founder of Zoom on our show a few years ago because we were one of the first, believe it or not, early users of Zoom. And, that's the capability, that contextual intelligence in video streaming is sorely needed. Sorry, Ray, go ahead.
It's totally important, right? And so as we're thinking about how that, how it actually works, right? I mean, just blink rate, right? We could look at blink rate, right? And realize that, maybe that person's not paying attention. It might be different for everybody, but we'll get it down to that point where we know, like for you, he's kind of cruising there. We're not sure if he's awake, but we should push some shock back to him to see if he picks up and goes.
So many people are multitasking, and that's the thing that we should be checking on, because it's like, are you in a Chrome browser right now? Are you listening? And people are just nodding. Yes. You're not listening. You're looking at the sports score.
Well, but as we launched the show, if some people noticed, I was looking down. I was tweeting the show live to my followers. So it may feel like you're not paying attention, but in fact, I was just trying to. But you're right.
Actively engaging in the conversation. They say that when you're presenting and people actually tweet, that you're more engaged in the presentation than if you weren't tweeting, which I probably read on Twitter, which was probably pushed out by Twitter to help people who are tweeting.
It was a Twitter ad. But I'm with look, Ray and I, when we were at a conference, and by the way, the motion of writing, what I'm hearing, I have probably 5, 6, 7x retention.
Helps you process.
And then when I go write articles, I simply look at the tweets just to remind myself the key highlights. Sorry, Ray. Go ahead.
Have you listened to Ray present? Like, if you're going to try and keep up, you try and keep up with everything that he's saying. And I'm like, again, I've got to get at least 3 things. Just remember a couple. But you're a great presenter, Ray. I've followed you numerous times and seen you present, and good idol to follow.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. But back to this point, right, on the engagement, right? It's the sense and respond, right? You are reading the audience. You're trying to figure out what the customers are thinking about, where they care. But you've been speaking to everybody. You've got a lot of touch points with customers as you're out there speaking, talking to folks. Are there certain industries that are benefiting from what you're doing more? Are there certain industries that are like less interested? Are there certain industries that are just rocking it right now and saying like, we got to jump in? So
there naturally this year that we've always said software is critical to everyone, right? And it simply has to work. And so there was a point in time sort of last year, there were certain industries that were maybe doing better than others, the banks, the telcos, the airlines, things like that. But, we had Carnival Cruise Line as an example, their CIO on stage at our Dynatrace event in January. And, their industry got decimated by what happened. But, a lot of these brands are still having to double down because they're getting ready for what's going to happen in the future. So there's probably 2 schools. There's the one school of group of people that are like, we just need to keep the lights on. Like I had a chat with, say, State of Minnesota, and they said they experienced more, that they were processing the applications for unemployment and providing, helping people put food on the table. the scale of the systems that happen to them in a really unorthodox way that they can't prepare for. You can prepare for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you know the traffic volumes that are coming. You're a state department, limited resources, you don't know what's about to happen. And so for them, keep the lights on. So a lot of the government departments are scrambling, the e-commerce brands that flip to click and collect, these sort of things, they've scaled massively. But then I'm talking to brands that have had to shut systems down. And they could be potentially like airlines, or they could be, cruise lines and travel and tourism. And actually, a lot of what their teams are doing now is there's a lot of noise out of their system. So they're now able to like really, really focus and go, when we come back, which we will, what are we going to do differently? How is this business going to survive? And they'll double down on digital experience and customer experience and try and optimize and automate as much as they can so that when they come back, they're more efficient, they can get to market faster, and they can ultimately deliver better experiences. So it's still, everyone working in technology still got a absolutely critical role. And whether the industry is booming at the moment or whether it's down, they're both required.
I mean, is that the theme for 2021 for Dynatrace and yourself? Like, help clients shift to a digital first mindset where they recognize that, it's maybe the most important lesson of 2020 is every company needs to be digital, and every company needs to, and I think it's perhaps the biggest blind spot companies had prior to this pandemic was the power of decentralization. And designing your company for movement, because that's the only way you can get to optimal speed. We moved 55,000 employees at Salesforce to work from home literally overnight because we're a cloud company. We could do that. We were designed for movement. What is Dynatrace going to do in terms of really helping companies adjust to this new normal, starting in the new year? Yeah,
so it's a really good question, and it's one of the things that we did, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. What was that Mark Anderson quote? He said, "Software's eating the world." And so from our perspective, it was like
eating the world.
Software. When we came up with this vision for the world needs software to work perfectly, and because it's medical, it's Salesforce, it's being able to access your real-time CRM and be able to get insights from it. It's absolutely everything. It's the Zoom calls we're on, so it's absolutely critical. And I think you've made a point where it's like a lot of the companies, particularly the ones that I'm talking to now, they always knew that it was important. Like everyone knows the importance of software. They know they need to do it. But as humans, we get worried about risk. We don't make change. We all know we need to be fitter, but what stops us from getting on the treadmill? Sometimes it's just, we don't, and we know we shouldn't drink too much, and sometimes we do. And it's just like this year was a forcing function, and it just made people go, to your point, 55,000 people now have to work from home. The IT department goes, oh my God, how are we going to do that? Well, you're going to have to figure it out. And that's what we're pretty good at as humans, is being able to adapt. And I guess then from a plug from a Dynatrace perspective, it's like, well, what we do is we provide that confidence, that visibility into the systems to be able to go, right, 55,000 people working from home. Can they get onto the applications? Is everyone able to get on at the same time? Is it working? Is there any scale issues? Is there any code? What do we need to fix? And so I think, to a lot of extent, we've helped people make the jump to whether it's they're jumping to cloud. Hopefully they've done that by now, but maybe they needed to scale out in the cloud faster, and they needed to scale their applications out. And so we give them that confidence to be able to go, it's okay, we'll hold your hand, let's go, we can do it, we'll do it together. and you have no choice.
Yeah, no, I mean, digital transformation is hard, and without visibility, I don't see how you can do it. Like if you don't have micro level visibility into your business across all lines of business with a source of truth, it just can't be done. I mean, as a 15-year practitioner running engineering, marketing services, visibility is it's the greatest threat and opportunity.
It's hard, and that's what it's great for Dynatrace at the moment. Without saying sort of a pandemic, but it's great in terms of like it is very hard. Technology changes so much, features are rolling out so quickly, so many different types of teams. Big cloud environments, really decoupled, as you were talking about, very broad. And so getting visibility into everything that's running is very, very, very difficult. And organizations are realizing how important it is to even get some of a footprint of your most important apps. I had a chat to a guy from U-Haul, and he's like, I go, what are you responsible for? And he goes, all of our business critical applications, all of the ones that make revenue. And I go, so you're sort of like the most important person in the company then, right? Because if people are going to pick up trucks in the middle of the night and it's your software, and he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so helping them run their operations, helping, you guys get it, you're technologists, you know how important it is. So we're solving a pretty big problem.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
For
Well,
sure.
we're going to have two quick questions. One, in Melbourne, what's the top, it's the startup culture. It's where software is in Australia. Tell us what the software scene's like. And the last one's really, what's your New Year's resolution for 2021?
New Year's resolution, jeepers. I've got to get through 2020 to start with. I've only just got back, Ray. Like I was in Boston, so I've been in Boston for 3 years and in London before that. So I've only really just got back to Australia. So I'm still learning what the scene's like here. I know it's always been a really good tech hub. We got companies like Atlassian down here and a few other kind of really good startups. Australians are like, we got sent to this island because we were originally back in the day, we were convicts and a little cheeky and we didn't do things the normal way. So there's plenty of startups that are doing just that. They're doing things not the normal way. They're not stealing and things like that. But we're a pretty innovative company. I did hear we interviewed Steve Wozniak, and he did say that he wanted to come to Melbourne. It was one of his favorite cities. And so if anyone's listening and can help him get down here, I'm all for it. And my New Year's resolution, is just to maintain the year that I had this year, which was when things got really hard, maintain as much happiness as I can, balance my technology time, keep up my fitness. I'm addicted to Peloton, which has helped me get through the pandemic. So I managed to get all that stuff down to Australia. So I'm one of the only people down in Australia with Peloton equipment. So that's my resolution. My resolution is just keep going, keep enjoying life, be optimistic, amplify the positives.
I was in Melbourne December last year at a Telstra conference. Best food, best people, unbelievable startup ecosystem. I was there for 4 days and I met a bunch of companies. Beautiful city.
It's a great city, isn't it? It's one of the, look, I've had to travel the world. I've lived in Boston. I've lived in London. I love all the cities. But coming back home to Melbourne, it is food, it's coffee, it's interesting.
Coffee,
probably the best coffee
Ray,
in the world.
Ray, the best. Coffee was awesome. Yeah.
Food is really amazing as well.
I have a local Italian cafe right on the corner, and even during the pandemic, I was able to go around, mask on, stand outside, get a coffee, and I was just like, this is just the best thing ever.
This is the best thing ever.
Thank you, Dave. We are here with Dave Anderson, digital evangelist at Dynatrace. More importantly, follow him on Twitter, DAVEANDO, and follow all his videos. They are amazing. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Dave,
have a great morning.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome evangelist, digital evangelist. That's so cool.
There's going to be a whole club of digital evangelists coming on your end.
Yeah. That's the first one I've met.
A whole association.
So I'm so happy.
But hey, who do we have next?
It's an honor for us to have Lara Druyan, Managing Director with Silicon Valley Data Capital, seed and early stage venture capital fund. Previously, Lara worked for RBC, where she was a Managing Director and Head of Innovation. Her team drove 14 new products into production. Lara was named one of the innovators to watch, 44 executives shaping future of banking by Bank Innovation. Lara was on our show last October, episode 106. So welcome back. You can follow Lara on Twitter at InvestingMom, INVESTINGMOM. And along with Lara, we have Andrew Hall, who's the founder and chief executive of Lumsden Partners, a firm focused on marketing services, media, and related technology industries. Prior to founding Lumsden Partners, Andrew worked with WPP in London and New York, where he was corporate executive vice president. Welcome both Lara and Andrew to DisrupTV.
Thank you.
So, hey, thanks for being here. I'm going to start with a question to Andrew, and it's really the hot question. Actually, there are two. So let's start with I think, which one's hotter, Facebook or Brexit? Where would you go?
Well, here it's definitely Brexit. We've spent most of the year having COVID distract us from the problems of Brexit. So it was a welcome relief, I would say, after 4 or 5 years of Brexit. But Brexit's come back with a vengeance. I think it's pretty embarrassing, really. We've spent 4 or 5 years trying to sort this out, and it would appear that we're headed to a no-deal situation. Now, whether that is theatre or reality remains to be seen. In EU speak, We're sitting here on the 11th of December. That's a long time between the 11th of December and the 31st. And most of the EU deals do tend to be struck at the last moment. But it's definitely not going to plan on either side.
Wow. So what are the differences? Where are people sitting? Like what's, and whether you're, remain or leave guy, I mean, it's like, what are the issues now? I mean,
well, I think there are perhaps within Britain, the main issue has been, I voted Remain just, I would say. So I'm one of the people in the middle. But the debate, rather like the situation in the United States, the debate has been dominated by the people on the extreme ends of the spectrum because they make the most noise. So we have, the hard Brexiters saying that the EU is responsible for all woes in the world, and if we can only get rid of it, ideally abolish it, probably in their viewpoint, that everything would be solved. And then you have the hardcore Remainers, suggesting things like, well, if there's a hard deal, no deal Brexit, there won't be any flights anymore from the UK to the EU and things like this. And it reduces the debate to a level of silliness, really. And I think most British people are kind of sensible and pragmatic, and they just want a sensible and pragmatic solution. It strikes me that this isn't, to me at least, it's an easy solution to solve because by far the most successful economy in Europe is Switzerland. They've been dealing with the EU since the 1950s. They've got several land borders with Switzerland. They've got the same, an economy that's pretty similar to the UK, lots of financial services and healthcare and so forth. They also have a devolved structure like the UK with cantons. We have obviously Scotland and England and so forth. And why we can't just admit that the chances of them having got this wrong are really, really low and copy what they have done, I really don't know.
And put all the exceptions in the WTO trade agreement and we'll be good?
Well, Switzerland is governed by the relationship with Switzerland and the Swiss have been very smart. So the joke about Switzerland is that it's a business masquerading as a country. I used to live in Switzerland, so and they've been very smart. They've got 21 individual treaties which have been separately negotiated. They had a vote actually very recently about the freedom of movement of people, and they decided not to amend the treaty. But they've done a very good job, very highly pragmatic, sensible. There's a framework here. And in fact, the smarter of the Brexiters, Daniel Hannan and one or two other people, had, essentially after the vote, sort of suggested, well, that's what we should do. But there's too much emotion involved in the situation. Something that you know a lot about in the United States. Given
We have no problem with that.
The similarities are striking. Actually.
Very striking, very striking. At the EU versus UK level, I think the critical issue, as amazing as this may seem for me to say this, is that there is a complete lack of understanding by each side of the other. So the British don't understand that for the EU, it's not really an economic issue, it's really a political project. And so the British have hammered and hammered away about it being a free trade deal and all of this stuff. And the EU that's a part of the situation from the EU, but not the whole of it. And the EU doesn't really understand that for British people, it's really about sovereignty. I mean, there was the point at which I realized that the vote was going to go this direction was on the main UK current affairs program when an elderly lady, the government was talking about economic benefits, and this benefit and that benefit. And this lady who's, I guess, in her 70s put her hand up and she said, well, listen, the real issue is we want our own country not to be a small part of someone else's. And that's the reality that's why the vote went in the direction it went in, and the EU finds this almost impossible to understand. And so we've reached this logjam. Whether it will be resolved, I don't know. I can tell you when I drove back from France on Friday, I came back from France on Friday, having been there for quite a while, there was I'm guessing about 10 or 15 kilometers of stationary trucks at the Channel Tunnel. So if that tells you how well it's going, that's perhaps a good anecdotal fact.
Well, it's
Yeah,
definitely
it's all
rolling
out.
financial markets. I mean, we're definitely seeing
Oh, for
that as
sure.
well. I mean,
Yeah,
we
for
saw
sure.
that happen to the FTSE, and we saw a couple of things happen this morning that hit those financial markets. But speaking about those financial markets, I mean, we're seeing a lot of shifts. There's a lot of shifts going on in these. Lara, what's going on with funding markets? What are some of these big trends? Like, are SPACs in,
Well, I
SPACs
think,
out, are startups back? I mean, with all these IPOs.
yeah. Yeah, well, in an environment where interest rates are zero, people look for, return where they can get it. And so the stock market, and Andrew and I have had a lot of conversations about this, appears to have nothing, of course, to do with the economy, and understand those things are different. You touched on, there's an enormous number of SPACs. Some venture funds have become full stack, everything from seed all the way to, providing liquidity for companies. A few funds have done that. And then increasingly, some venture-backed companies like DraftKings went public via a SPAC. A friend of mine who's in the casino, used to own Bally's, has been on casino boards for years, tells me DraftKings is valued, in his view, at about 2x what it should be in terms of market cap. And then these late stage private companies are doing SPAC offs. Whoever is going to bid the most. So there's it's a seller's market in many ways. There was, of course, when COVID hit hard in Q2, you saw a bit of seizing up, of course, in the investing markets. And of course, for anybody selling to enterprise, a number of companies I know well and work with, did goose egg in Q2 and then came back, roaring back in Q3 as people said, hey, the world hasn't shut down. So there is a ton of activity because people look at the public markets and say technology's doing just fine.
I was talking to John Samorjai, who runs Salesforce Ventures for my company. And I think we're only second most active, only behind Google, 400 plus companies in our portfolio. I think we invest in a startup on a cadence of once a week. And it hasn't slowed down at all in the pandemic. In fact, there's been an acceleration. What have you noticed, both of you, in terms of how the pandemic has changed? The Valley's known for having a very intense culture around innovation. Is that going to remain the same? What are some of the trends specific to the pandemic?
Lara, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think, Andrew and I started working on this in the spring. Like, what did we think was going to stay the same? What was going to be different in the pandemic? And, it seems pretty clear that remote work is here to stay, at least in some capacity, whether that's people working for the Facebooks and Googles from, Chicago or Chattanooga or wherever they want, people giving up commutes in really expensive cities like San Francisco and New York. And so that certainly seems to be the case. And of course, technologies that enable, I think, digital transformation. At Ray's conference, CIOs have said, digital transformation, it was something they were interested in. Now it's a necessity because to your last guest point, people all of a sudden said, like capital markets in New York, a group that never expected to work remotely, all of a sudden went remote, right? So there's a whole lot that needs to take place. And I think an appreciation for redoing an entire enterprise stack to support that.
Right. Acquisitions made completely remote. And San Francisco is pretty expensive. Even Elon Musk is moving to Texas.
Remote due diligence. Think about that.
I actually, so my husband and I've lived here for a long time, and we've often heard about the demise of San Francisco, but we're actually now seeing it because the number of people we know moving is actually not that small. And friends of ours who've lived here for a long time, it's actually pretty shocking.
Where are they heading to? Austin? Where are they going? Is there
Austin, Florida, Seattle? They look like tax refugees. It's
there's a common thread there, but yes.
States without in-state income tax.
So
Andrew,
what's going on in your end, Andrew?
I think in my world, I think the really interesting question, perhaps the most important question, is what impact will this have on the consumer? And I think it's a little early to say, in that there is some good early data which shows people are more conscious about what they're shopping for. There's been a fall in brand loyalty. People are more focused.
McKinsey was on our show. 75% have changed brands during the pandemic.
Correct. Yeah, and
Which
it's consistent across.
Astounding. Yeah.
It's consistent across country as well,
Yeah.
and the main driver is value. In every country surveyed, that value was the main driver. So I think that the critical question is, I heard actually Sam Zell talking about this, is the pandemic going to be a sort of blip, or is it going to be more like the Great Depression or the Second World War in terms of people's psyche? And I'm mostly involved in the marketing services and advertising business, and so that's a critical question. I don't think we can assume that it will go back to how it was. Some things might go back to how they were, but I think there's going to be a fundamental shift here, and it's also against the backdrop of the so-called K-shaped recovery and most consumers being less wealthy. That's going to vary a bit by country, obviously, or maybe a lot by country, and certainly a lot by income distribution. But in general, if you're talking about mass markets, consumers are definitely going to be less wealthy. So
there's two additional filters in terms of the discretionary spend. First, the pre-pandemic, it was relevance, but now it's safety and accessibility as well.
Correct.
Many cities going back to lockdown, so you just don't have access to certain goods and services, and then of course safety is becoming like a brand pillar. I'll walk in a restaurant, if I don't see the employees wearing proper masks, I walk right back out. So it's.
I think it's also an issue of. I mean, Zoom is a good example, and its various competitors. I think there's also an issue of learned behavior, and so what you often see is a situation in which the change doesn't happen gradually, but when it happens and people learn what to do, they don't go back to what they were doing before. And so you could think about that in terms of technology adoption, which is obviously much more the subject of some of the other people on the show than me. But also you could think about it in terms of, I think one of the things that consumers are likely to do is they're likely to say, well, I've been buying a whole lot of stuff that I don't really need. And, here I am stuck at home. I've been in my house, where I've, do I really need all this stuff, right? And
do I really need pants that don't have an elastic waistband? Apparently, is something that I see a lot of.
But at the same time, we've had this crazy. I don't know whether you've picked this up, or whether anybody on your show has talked about this. We've had a crazy situation in the auction collectibles market, which has gone ballistic.
Yeah.
So things like watches, for example, are setting all-time record high prices, and art as well, and so it's really strange what's going on. It's not necessarily
that one less trip to the Maldives has actually allowed you to buy something.
Yes, that's right.
What's going on here?
Or at a more mundane level, the fact that people are not at home or are at home and they're not going to the office means they can't go out for lunch, they can't buy lots of coffees at wherever and spend money when they're in a big city. And so that money has become, if you've still got a job and you're still being paid at the same level, your discretionary income has gone up quite a lot. Yeah.
It is, and you get like Dave bringing his Peloton to Australia, so
yeah,
because he can't get one down there. So, but hey, but speaking about this, one of the things that you pointed up was you're in the digital ad space, right? And there's no bigger story than what's going on with this antitrust lawsuit with Facebook, with 47 AGs and the government piling on, and what's going on in Europe piling on. I mean, it says everybody wants a cut of the big tech company. What's going on?
Well, the Financial Times headline was "Big Tech's Standard Oil Moment." Oh. So that's how they see it.
But wait, if data's the new oil, what's going on? They're not even talking about data.
So they're I think, I have some insight into this, but the preparation of the case by the states has been going on for quite some time. And they've been reaching out and doing a lot of research and so forth. So I think it's pretty serious. I don't know for certain. In the case of the EU and the UK, with this sort of arms race on fines, I think they figured out that the fines weren't changing behavior, so perhaps they better be higher. And so I think the EU is 6% of global turnover. That's what they're proposing, and the UK, I think, is suggesting 10. Wow. So those are pretty big numbers. Yeah, pretty big numbers. So whether it will result in change, I don't know at this point. It's way too early to say. And I think, a lot of this sort of litigation is going to go on for a long time, clearly.
There's going to be a lot of rich lawyers after this, I can tell.
For sure. That's for sure.
Lara, this is my final question to you. You've been a longtime champion for women in tech, from being mentors to being sponsors and advocating programs to improve inclusion. What are your observations in terms of this year? What's working and what's more needed?
So every public board is looking for women and looking for people of color, underrepresented minorities. There's a ton of that, whether it's Pinterest or many other companies have made announcements in additions to their board, diversifying that. But for women, at least in tech and the startup world, here's a staggering number for you. For the first 3 quarters of 2021, startups with at least one female founding team member raised, and this is going to sound like a lot, $13.8 billion, but that is down 31% relative to 2019.
Wow.
So
31%, so 1/3 less than pre-pandemic, 2019.
Yep.
Wow.
I haven't seen the stats yet for women founders, like sort of a CEO founder, but I can't expect it looks too much different. And, just showing that we still have a long way to go. And I haven't dug into this yet to figure out why this is, but it's certainly not good news in terms of, it's obviously it's quite a big step backwards.
Well, at least there's a law here in California, Senate Bill 979, that's trying to diversify the boards. So there might be something that picks up on that end. So, all right. But before we wrap this up, this is the second last show of the year. So we're doing New Year's resolutions. I'll start with Lara and then get to you, Andrew.
Thank you for that. I was like, New Year's, oh my God, I guess it is, getting to New Year's. I guess the one thing that, for me, that COVID has taught me is to appreciate small things. Obviously, the fact that I live in California, and when we didn't have a smoke-filled fall, when I could go outside, so appreciating the little things when it doesn't look like I had Mars outside. So I am resolving to continue to appreciate the small things, even in a new normal or a next normal.
Got it. Very cool. Andrew, on your end.
Well, I've spent most of 2020 with long COVID. So my New Year's resolution is to take better care of myself and my family. And I would urge everybody to stay safe, because the fatality is not the only thing. Long COVID is no fun, and you certainly don't want it.
Great advice. Thank you.
Wow. Great advice. We're here with Lara Druyan, Managing Director at Silicon Valley Data Capital, and Andrew Hall, Founder and Chief Executive at Lumsden Partners. I can follow Lara's Twitter at investingmom, and Andrew is thankfully not on Twitter. No, Andrew is not on Twitter. He's happy to be on Twitter.
That was good.
He's super healthy. Let's get the mental health down. He's all good. Hey, thank you so much for being here. Have a happy holiday season, and we'll see you a little bit after the show as well.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah, Andrew's dialing in from other side of the pond, so we're interrupting his dinner. Our final guest. This is where Ray and I bring someone who hits a grand slam and brings the whole show home. Is Marty Marcinczyk, GM founder at Helm, a Comcast company. Marty is the head of customer experience solutions portfolio for Comcast Strategic Development Group and the founder CEO of Helm. In his role, Marty focuses on establishing, acquiring, and or investing in new technologies that expand a company's offering in customer experience solutions. He also leads a team that developed Comcast's proprietary enterprise customer data platform, CDP, a solution he founded during his tenure and now is taken to market through Helm. Before his current role, Marty led Comcast's innovation strategy on customer care technologies, working on areas such as customer personalization and customer experience enhancement. Prior to Comcast, Marty held various executive positions at AOL, Transaction Network Services, and also was a founding member of several successful IPO startups. Follow Marty on Twitter at MarCinczyk. Welcome, Marty, to DisrupTV.
Thank you. I have to say, I'm not a big Twitter person, so you won't see me on there too often, but maybe I'll change my tune. And I'm not sure if I'm an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur these days. I did start off my career as, in startup world. I was pretty fortunate and successful into taking a couple companies public. But, ever since I went to Comcast, I was given the opportunity to take that startup mentality and, really try to transform the operations, the care operations that were ongoing and, take it to the next level. So it was pretty exciting. They didn't put any boundaries and they allowed me really to take that entrepreneurial spirit and move forward there. So it's
awesome.
Been a great ride. I've been there about 15 years now. After, 13 or so, we kicked off Helm, which was a great thing.
Well, it sounds like you're both, and it's what a great privilege to be able to have that freedom and autonomy in a big company to really, be a trailblazer, which is awesome.
Yeah, it was interesting in the beginning. It was, you walk in the door and, they're like, all right, let's try to improve customer experience. And you take a look at the landscape and there's hundreds of systems across the company, many different regions, many different organizations, a lot of different owners of technology stacks. And when you looked at it, it was like, how do I get a view of the customer? And everyone had their own little lens. And it was like, is there a system out there? Is there something that we can buy that could bring it all together? And we really challenged a lot of the CRM providers and the UCC providers. At that time, it was probably around 2010, 2012. We put RFPs out. We've gone through all their, we had presentations at their, their annual events. And we requested, can we have you guys help us bring that solution together? And at that time, it just wasn't happening. So a lot of the efforts internally was like, how do we start to stitch the fabric together internally? And that's what we wound up doing. It was pretty awesome.
That fabric is so important, right? We're seeing that as part of the heart of almost every CX initiative. I mean, this year has been crazy on CX, right? I mean, you got Facebook on customer, Twilio on segment, Vala's company acquiring something, but I can't really talk about that. Some large acquisition, but it's an interesting space, right? Because a lot of it is getting to signal intelligence, right? Can we actually get dynamic feedback loops? Can we actually predict? And it's almost as if suddenly people woke up and realized that in the enterprise, just like in the consumer side, we have a social graph. In the enterprise, we need a business graph, right? And this is starting to pick up in terms of helping people figure out, CX, helping figure out next best action, even helping start building AI models, right? And you're doing something similar. You're doing some really cool stuff on the back end. I'm not sure how much you can divulge, but it'd be fun to help share a little bit what you can. So,
but it is, everyone is going after, how do we improve customer sat? How do we get that 360 view of the customer? How do we start to personalize journey experiences that the customers have? And then how, as an enterprise, how do you start to understand those journeys that the customers are going through? And that was the same, the problems or challenges that we had at Comcast. It was like, how do we really start to stitch it all together so that when a customer does communicate with us, how do we know what was just going on? How do we know that they were just, had an error on their set-top box? How do we know that they called in a couple of times and they had a technician, John, at their house? How do we bring all that relevant contextual information to the forefront so that next interaction that the company has, we could then seamlessly, carry on that conversation? So I like to say is like, what we built is how do we improve the relationships that these companies, Comcast, as well as other companies, have with their customers? How do we get to know the customers by having all that information? How do we start to personalize the experiences that the customers have when they embark through those journeys? And then how do we start to transform the operations from one of historically a very reactive based one to more of a proactive based one? And that's was our challenge at Comcast that I think we did a really good job at. And now that's what we're taking forward to other companies as well.
That's awesome. I mean, I think a hallmark of a world-class service organization is to shift from a defensive posture where you wait for someone to tap you in the shoulder for asking for help to an offensive, proactive, and the only way to get there is enhanced contextual intelligence, because it leads to you building your anticipatory muscle, anticipating the needs, and then delivering personalized service. And that is absolutely, I think, the key to success. How did you get Comcast to go to market with a CX product? And what's the most important thing in order to make successful CX product?
All right. Before I go there, I'm going to start out and say, like, we're a Philadelphia-based company. And one of the great historians in Philadelphia, Ben Franklin, he once said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And I think it's very relevant in today's world, right?
Love that.
So,
Marty, if you are on Twitter, that's one you should tweet. Because you're going to get lots of retweets and likes.
But take that
last statement.
and we'll use that, and I'll try to make an analogy. There was a professor at UPenn, Professor Ackoff, and he once said, data leads or gains to wisdom, is the gain to wisdom. And, he said, like, an ounce of information is worth a pound of data. An ounce of knowledge is worth a pound of information. An ounce of understanding is worth a pound of knowledge, and an ounce of wisdom is worth a pound of understanding. So wisdom comes from data. And, like, the underlying world of CX today, in order to make improvements with the relationships and the customer experience you have with your customers, is you really have to, create your ML, your AI, your bots, your customer experience, your CRM. All these systems they need to get better. They need to get an understanding of what's going on. And the underlying aspect is getting reliable and accurate data as the foundation. And at Comcast, that was our challenge. It was just like, how do we have all these disparate systems across the ecosystem? We had 300 of them. And how do you get all this data across all these different systems, bring it together very lightweight, and then be able to leverage that data in real time to improve those experiences, personalize those experiences with the customers? And so that's what we built. And in 2016, we were at full scale, 30 million customers, 300 plus different data sources coming in. And we're able to start leveraging that data in real time to improve those experiences. We're able to stitch it all together. And at that point in time, we were like, we built something that we wanted that no one else really had. And we didn't know what it was way back then. And now some people are calling it customer data platforms, but I really believe that that's more of a marketing-based kind of application. And we really started it from a service-based. And we thought, you know what, this is something unique. Comcast is a very entrepreneurial company. We have a strategic development group that goes into new verticals and new industries. And, we pitched to senior executives and we said, we have something here. We should try to take it to market. And, that we had a couple of, check boxes that we had to adhere to. And after about a year or so, the leadership said, yep, go ahead, have a crack at it. And so I joined forces with, the internal operations. A gentleman by the name of Luke Hagstrand is my partner in crime. He's the other founder of Helm. And we, started first off targeting a lot of the other telcos in the MSO space. And then we soon realized that this platform that we built, this data platform repository, it's not just about the customer. It's also about getting data around any other entity. So you could look at like a franchise. So you have, food and beverage or retail organizations that are really driving towards the digital space right now. Sure. And they don't have a good view of all the operations that are going on and all their different site locations. Yeah. So could we leverage our platform to start getting all the intellect about what's going on at each store and then bring that up to the headquarters, and then also get information about all the customers that are coming in from the loyalty standpoint. So once we started doing that, we're like, oh, this is a cool another vertical we can go after. And then it's just been exploding since then. So we're looking, like the insurance and the airline and other industries and other verticals. It's a pretty interesting thing, because once you have that foundation of that data, then it enhances all the other applications within the enterprise. It helps all these other digital initiatives, the customer experience initiatives, as well as the hottest topic in the world right now, like the MLAI. It's all it's dependent upon having the data around the enterprise or the ecosystem there.
And what a forcing function the pandemic has been in terms of businesses understanding that if you're data poor, you just can't compete in the next normal. So many companies are just answering the question, what happened, descriptive use of analytics, and then why it happened, diagnostic use of analytics, and then some small percentage using algorithms for predictions. But in terms of prescriptive use of analytics, what can I do right now to help position myself to be successful with the predictions I'm making in sales, service, marketing, commerce? How could you, if you ignore that data-rich environment that's with every single moment of truth touch point with your customer, It's just a blind spot that, in my humble opinion, ultimately will destroy your company. I just don't know how you can compete without it. Anyway, sorry, Ray, your question. I know you're waiting to ask, but
no,
it's just to me, as a former CMO, chief customer officer, I was a chief customer officer for 10 years. I can't imagine not being able to. I mean, you have to just have super focus and understanding every touch point.
There's two things, right? And that I'll add to some of the stuff that you're probably addressing, Marty, is that the notion of data gravity, right? Data needs to be close to be able to make a decision, and decision velocity, which is I got to make quick decisions, right? And people are learning that, right? Post pandemic. Yeah. So, and you guys have built that into your system. So you talk about something a lot, and I've heard you say this at our Ambient Experience Summit, and I've heard you say this before, at some of our events, is really systems thinking. Let's talk a little bit about that and really why it's so important with CX products. Like, and we had this interesting debate the other day about CRM versus CX versus front office, right? Like, I have no idea what to call this stuff anymore because it's all one big mesh at the moment.
Food, water, and oxygen.
Thinking.
Yeah, it's definitely
water and oxygen.
All those verticals are all the same, right? They all come together. They have to work together. And when you think about a system, you have to look at the performance of it as a whole. You can't look at it and say, all right, I'm going to improve an individual part of the system and hope that it improves the whole system. Because if they don't work together, all of the parts, then the overall system's not going to work. And at an enterprise, you have a lot of different departments. They're purchasing a lot of different applications, and they're driving towards making improvements to their part of the organization. But unless all of those different disparate parts within the organization work together and all the systems of those departments work together cohesively, the entire product is not going to work very effectively. Like what I was saying before about the Professor Ackoff and Penn, he said, take a look around, and you could find there's hundreds of different cars that are being manufactured today. You can go buy the best engine, the best transmission, the best tires, the best axle, blah, 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 and bring it into a room and then try to put it together. And it's probably not going to work. The car's not going to drive. So you have to make the inner operations, or all of the dependencies and the interactions between those parts, you have to make them work together. And that's the biggest challenge. So what I would say is you have to look at a system as a whole. You can't look at the individual parts and try to improve individual parts. You have to constantly be looking at the entirety. And I think that's really what customer experience is. It's like from the customer lens. So the customer is looking at the company as a whole. They're not looking at the marketing department or the customer service department or the technician department. They're saying my relationship with this company is my relationship with this company. It's not with each individual component of the company. And I think that's really why I'm a big proponent of system thinking. It's you have to look at things as the whole, the collective, to produce the best, basically, customer experience for an enterprise.
That makes a ton of sense. Ray will ask you about your personal New Year's resolution. I'm going to ask about Helm's resolution for 2021. What are some of the big, big initiatives, or what's your vision for next year in terms of where you'd like to see Helm go?
So growth is the biggest thing, right? So of course we want to bring on more clientele. We want to expand into new verticals. And we're doing a lot of, partnerships with some strategic technologies. So we're not the end all be all. We come to the table with a very good product, but, our product collectively with some, analytics companies or some ML companies, collectively we can create, the bigger customer experience solution. So I think more partnerships, collaboration with other technology stacks, I think that's going to be a big thing. I also think that, I think we'll take more of a customer-centric view as the year, transpires. I really like right now, we have the enterprise view. So we look at the lens of, everything that's within one enterprise. But if you flip the model at some point, the consumer has relationships with 20, 30, 50, 100 companies on a regular basis. So should all of those experiences be different, or is it potential down in the future, maybe in the VR world or some other world that, you could enter in this domain and have a similar experience with your telco that you do with your insurance company, that you do with your airline. And maybe you can have, your 360 view of your interactions with and your relationships with all the companies.
Super.
Yeah, and an experience outside your industry could be where the bar is set. So if you have this myopic view of, I'm a telco, I'm just going to compare and benchmark my CX performance compared to other telcos, not realizing that it could be a retailer or a bank, or that's really raising the bar in terms of the expectation of the consumer and client. So I think it's critically important to have visibility across multiple industries, share best practices, recognizing that the innovation velocity, the speed and direction and the pace of change is such that you really can't just look at your own backyard, in my opinion. Most of our research tells us that. So.
The other thing I was just gonna say is, like, when I was growing up, I was a gamer, right? But that was back in the Atari days. And and some of the UI that we implemented into our internal Helm UIs was based on like the Defender UI. You're playing Defender and you could see the future coming in. Well, we got to do that, and we have the historical coming in and zoom in, zoom out. But also, I don't know, I'm sure you guys have seen Ready Player One, the movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I know it's a stretch, but Parzival goes in and he walks in and like the curator is navigating him across the whole life of James Halliday. Right. Yeah. And he also can go into the store and shop for things. But it's one kind of experience that he has as he's going through and navigating through that. Now, I don't know if that's the future, but like envision that maybe you are in that virtual world and you're interfacing with all these different relationships and companies that you have. Maybe that's the future. I'm not quite sure.
Sure.
No, I agree with you. I mean, we got collapsing industries around new value chains. Those value chains are interconnected. Those networks of networks are driving and spinning off the next pieces. I mean, you're definitely right there.
And all companies are investing in digital twins. So that becomes even more of a reality because every industry recognizes the power of digital twins. So it's an enabler, in my opinion.
And those nodes of interactions are definitely important.
Yeah.
So, but Vala's right. I'm going to ask you, what's your New Year's resolution? And then we're going to roll out.
New Year's resolution. Definitely stay safe and healthy. I mean, that's number one. I haven't traveled in a long time, and I love to travel. So in the past 5 years, like I went to Spalsberg to see polar bears. I went to Antarctica to see penguins. I went to Galapagos to see for the boobies. I've been locked down. I mean, I've been able to come down to Florida, and I'm here, but I'm still fine with this house on the water. It's beautiful, but I can't go anywhere. So I think travel is in me. And then I guess the last thing is I'm working on how to bake better bread. I'm a sourdough bread maker now these days. Like you can work and do things on the side.
Renaissance man, I love it.
I'm trying to learn how to golf. I'm terrible, but I'm trying to get better at golf. So
well, come join me. If you're really bad at golf, I'm a perfect partner. We'll come hang out.
Come out here. There's a lot of good courses down here, right?
I'll come down there too if they let me. So I'm gonna get quarantined for like 2 weeks on both ends. So, we are here with Marty Marcinczyk, general manager and founder at Helm, serial entrepreneur, and more importantly at Comcast companies where he's at. You can follow him on Twitter if he's there at MarciNCzyk. Thanks a lot, Marty.
Marty, you're great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Wow. Grand slam. That was it. That was awesome. Wow.
Sorry, we are on episode 217. It's coming. It is our last show of the year. And we've got some interesting guests. And once again, we are sponsored by Robots and Pencils. And thank you so much for your sponsorship. And for folks, check them out. Who do we have coming for episode 217?
217. We're going to get to 670 interviews by next week. 670 interviews in 4 years. That's amazing. Yeah. Mark Levy, employee experience advisor, pioneer of experience leader at Airbnb.
Who's that company? I've never heard of them before. Airbnb. What do they do? We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, congratulations to you, Mark. Lunch is on you. This was in person. Chantel Baer, founder and marketing partner at FourSpace, and Jay Jacobs, senior vice president and head of research and strategy at Global X ETFs. So another, incredible
We're going to talk
roster
about
of,
the IPO hot market of assuring and UX. We're going to get space, right? Chantel did a space panel at the at CCE, and Jay Jacobs. I mean, this is going to be interesting to talk about XETFs. So we got a action-packed show. I'm going to flip it on Vala. Any last words?
I think all the New Year's resolutions in terms of staying safe and healthy should be priority one for everyone. So hopefully, hopefully people will take some time end of December and decompress, ready yourself for what will be an incredibly, hopefully successful year 2021 for all our viewers. We wish you the best. And, Ray and I really appreciate it. Without the viewers, without the guests, there is no DisrupTV. So thank you for watching. And we hope you tune in for the last show where we can reflect on 2020 and about the 150 some odd interviews we've done this year. Stay healthy and safe. That's a good New Year's resolution, right?
Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah for those celebrating, and see you guys next Friday. Take care, everybody.